I'm the only one left who remembers the infinite Earths. You see, I know the truth. I remember all that happened. And I'm not going to forget. Worlds lived. Worlds died. Nothing will ever be the same. Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. The idea of a shared universe of characters who otherwise exist in their own TV show, book, movie, or in this case, comic, opens up the possibility that these otherwise separate entities will meet each other. But sometimes, it's not enough just to be a crossover. It has to be bigger than that. Something that affects an entire line of characters. It has to be an event. Sometimes it's for an anniversary. Sometimes it's just a big blockbuster meant to get them some more money. Sometimes it's to reshape the entire direction of the company. Sometimes it's to wipe the slate clean and start over. But for whatever the reason, for the last 30+ years, event comics have become a thing, sometimes annually, or multiple times in a single year, thanks Marvel. A limited series will be produced crossing over as many characters as they can cram into it, and the regular story of an ongoing series will be interrupted to tie into the event. After all, this is something affecting their entire world in one way or another, so why not show how big this is? And with that introduction, Atop the Fourth Wall proudly presents Event Comics Month. For the next 4 weeks, we will take a look at 4 event miniseries, 2 from DC and 2 from Marvel, as voted on by Patreon sponsors last December. What was the very first event is debatable. For the purposes of my list for voting, it required its own limited series, otherwise it's just a crossover storyline and not an event, as well as tie-in issues, few though they may be in some cases. The only exception to this was Marvel's Superhero Contest of Champions from 1982, which many list as the first event comic, despite the lack of any tie-in issues. It's just the 3-issue limited series, plus 2 annuals a few years later that expanded on some stuff. I can get into more of the weird backstory from that another day. We're starting things off with Crisis on Infinite Earths because I've mentioned it several times already on the show, and it's responsible for a lot of problems that still affect DC today. And in that regard, it is the quintessential event comic, and its tagline was accurate, because nothing was ever quite the same after it. So here's a bit of backstory we have to get into here. One of the reasons for Crisis's existence was to celebrate DC's 50th anniversary. As I've talked about before during Secret Origins Month, comics can be divided into ages: Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, etc. The Golden Age characters are the very originals. The Silver Age, the reinvention of those characters. It was decided that there would be a clear separation of the two in that they existed in different universes. However, they would cross over. In particular, the Justice League and the Justice Society would have an annual crossover that was usually titled something along the lines of Crisis on Earth 1, Crisis on Earth 3, etc. This brings us to writer and editor Marv Wolfman, who loved those crossovers as a kid and came up with an idea for a villain who would be a threat to all the heroes of the DC universe. Someone who would force all of the good guys in all universes, past, present, and future, to come together and face this challenge. And that villain was called the Librarian!
Don't you know the Dewey Decimal System?
The actual idea behind the villain did match the name, someone who cataloged all the heroes of Earth, all their abilities and weaknesses, and sold that information to villains. That idea would actually get revised for the revamp of the Calculator, yes, that one, in the 2000s. The problem with having the multiple Earths thing was, for newer readers at the time, a bit confusing because you have 2 guys named Superman who basically have overall the same lives, but one is an older dude with a slightly more curved S. It was decided by the 80s to finally revise DC's history into one continuity and universe to make it more streamlined and simple for readers to get into. Wolfman announced the book in 1981, but he had to research a ton of DC history to make this happen, so the book didn't end up getting published until 1985, which again was more appropriate for DC's 50th. Celebrate the long history of the company with a bold new direction that would set the stage for the next 50 years. A limited series like this was was a big deal, and its success even more so. Marv Wolfman lamented even in 1998 that the success of Crisis had inspired so many big company-wide event books among publishers, since his story was just meant to clean house and make things easier. And those events ended up causing more problems than they solved. But for now, let's just dig into Crisis on Infinite Earths and judge the book on its own merits and failings, not for all the problems it may have created later.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Life out, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he's a man punch, wears a birdie hat. Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara, coins, robots, Amazon and trucks. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
Let's get something out of the way here. Crisis on Infinite Earths is 12 issues long and has a lot of subplots running through it because it's supposed to touch on every aspect of the DC universe. As such, there's going to be a lot I don't bring up, scenes I'm going to flat out ignore just because there isn't enough time per week, nor do you have enough of an attention span to bring up every single thing happening in it. In addition, not looking at the covers. They're all good, and the most popular trade cover is the absolutely beautiful and awe-inspiring Alex Ross cover that pretty much features everybody in the DCU. We begin with the beginning. In the beginning, there was only one, a single black infinitude. Turns out someone forgot to plug the universe in. So cold and dark for so very long that even the burning light was imperceptible. This made cooking s'mores very difficult. But the light grew, and the infinitude shuddered, and the darkness finally screamed, as much in pain as in relief. Was it good for you two? And thus the multiverse was born, an infinite amount of worlds all separated by a different vibrational frequency. Basically, everything occupies the same space, but you'd have to alter your internal vibration in order to actually shift into another universe. We cut to one of these alternate Earths that is quickly being consumed by the coconut filling of a Mounds bar. The wall of whiteness consumes everything in its path. Man, now Hollywood is trying to whitewash entire planets. Above the people screaming and fleeing in terror is this dude in a green cloak. He cries and bemoans the fact that there's nowhere these people can go and that this world is being destroyed. There's nothing he can do about it but observe the phenomenon. And as the world is finally completely enveloped by the wall of white, he vanishes, proclaiming that he has to endure this yet again, as he has hundreds now. We then cut to Earth 3, a more well-known parallel universe in the DCU because it's been featured in several stories. This is basically DC's mirror universe, where the heroes are all evil. We saw a newer version of it in Countdown, with the good guy version of the Joker. However, here there is only one hero, and in our subversion of tropes, it's the good guy of the mirror universe who has the goatee. Luthor. And yet, despite this being a world where the bad guys are in charge, they're still trying to stop the devastation caused by the Wave of White. Why's that? Well, let Marvel explain it.
There is no profit to be made in the destruction of the planet. It is very bad for business.
Luthor realizes that Earth is doomed. The wall is actually composed of antimatter. On the off chance you're unfamiliar with the concept, antimatter is made of particles, or rather antiparticles, but still, where the normal charges of them are reversed, usually a negative charge. When matter and antimatter collide, they annihilate each other and release energy. Unfortunately, this probably means someone is annihilating universes because they're too cheap to buy some damn batteries. With Earth doomed, he goes to his wife and they decide there is one bit of hope. After Luthor met heroes of other universes, he began work on a prototype device to travel to those other universes. It's conveniently baby-sized, so the two are going to send their son to another reality, and that universe's unique yellow tinting will make him Luthor Man! Well, something of the sort, actually, but yeah, they tearfully send their son to Earth 1, the universe where the Justice League comes from, as their universe is destroyed, leaving only the fresh scent of pine. Unfortunately, during this time period, the Justice League satellite was abandoned, so the capsule holding the baby just settles into an empty chunk of metal in orbit. Don't you hate it when someone comes to deliver a package to your front door and then leaves it out where anyone can take it? Nearby, another satellite is a lot more active, and observing just how badly things are going in other realities. The guy in charge here is the Monitor, which might sound familiar to those of you who have seen the old Countdown reviews 400 episodes ago. In that case, there were 52 monitors, one for every parallel universe that existed in that future story. It was an interesting concept, full of mystery and intrigue when that was introduced, mainly because there was only one of him in Crisis on Infinite Earths. And that ended up being a huge letdown because all it amounted to was 52 assholes yelling, "We should do something! Should we do something?" at each other for an hour, as opposed to having just one monitor who proudly proclaimed, "I'm gonna do something! In fact, I'm gonna do a lot of things!" While he goes to retrieve the escape pod from Earth 3, he sends his agent, Harbinger, to gather to him an assemblage of heroes and villains from various parallel Earths to combat this threat. Also, there's an unintentional bit of poor layout work in these 2 pages. The title of the issue, The Summoning, is spread across both pages, but because of the way the page folds, they put a huge amount of space between summon and ing. In the trade, it looks fine. In the scans, it's the summon ing. Or maybe the issue is just supposed to be the summon and that ing is another satellite. Anyway, Harbinger, or Lila, which is her real name, is able to split herself into multiple bodies to get several people at once. It's kind of like the White Rabbit from 2 weeks ago, but with more clothes. And thus begins a gathering of forces that goes across time and dimensions. It's a lot, so I won't list them all for you, but as I said, it goes from the past to the future, recruiting Dawnstar from the Legion of Superheroes of the 31st century, whose New 52 version we saw in my review of The Culling, the second person to bear the name Firebrand, a woman from the 1940s, whose modern, idiotic version you might recall from Battle for Bloodhaven, and of course, Blue Beetle Ted Kord, his first appearance in the DC Universe after they bought Charlton's Heroes, who of course you should all be familiar with since I did a freaking huge retrospective on the Blue Beetle last year. However, on one of the excursions to find Arian, the ancient magical lord of Atlantis, which is extra weird because I've been marathoning Stargate Atlantis and a magical ancient kind of takes on a whole new meaning for me. Some kind of shadow creature emerges and possesses her. She does indeed get Arian, but there's a more important figure to behold here in a mental institution on Earth 2. Roger Hayden, aka the supervillain known as the Psycho Pirate. Because in the Golden Age, sometimes you just go with the first name that comes to you and hope it works out. Psycho Pirate has the ability to manipulate emotions using his Medusa mask, though it's very addictive for him. As Harbinger continues to recruit people, the Monitor briefly gives her backstory, that she was found a half-dead child floating at sea, and he rescued her and raised her these last 20 years. But he also knows that Harbinger will be the one to murder him. Dude, spoilers! I'm guessing he knows that since he must have some limited ability to perceive time, since otherwise, how is he plucking out people from different time periods? The characters are all gathered in the Monitor's satellite, now also including the Earth 2 Superman, as well as several others. Oh, and this Galactus cosplayer came wandering in. Nah, that's Dr. Polaris, another villain. Anyway, after they speculate about what they're doing here, shadowy figures emerge from all the walls to attack the group. Despite all their powers, the Shadow Demons, as they are called, are barely fought back, their powers doing little but slowing them. However, a bright light cascades into the room, forcing the Shadow Demons to retreat. The Monitor formally presents himself, along with that haircut. I am the Monitor, and I have summoned you here because your universes are about to die. I have come to sell you insurance. As we enter issue 2, we see that weird things are happening in history. Back in caveman times, the character Anthro witnesses a vision of a futuristic city when he redirects a stampede of mammoths away from his tribe.
And in that distant future, that same stampede of mammoths charges through the city before disappearing again. In the present, the Joker murders an aging film producer who owned the copyright to a bunch of silent comedies, who refused to give those copyrights to him. Is that better or worse than YouTube's copyright system? You make the call! Why did he want them in particular? Worth, roughly 26 million once they underwent the new computer coloration process. The Joker works for Ted Turner? He is evil! Batman arrives and the two fight, but it's interrupted by the sudden appearance of the Flash, with pink energy billowing out of him.
Too much pink energy is dangerous.
The Flash also looks almost like he's decaying or withering away, and then does so as he yells that the world is dying all around him. Back on the Monitor satellite, we have to tie up that loose thread idea that was part of Wolfman's original idea for him. The fact that he had been appearing in other comics before this, selling weapons and information to supervillains. He explains that that was meant to test various superpowered beings to help him catalog their abilities to get them ready for this moment. The wall of antimatter is consuming world after world. At least 1,000 have fallen already, and that with every world lost, he diminishes while their enemy gets stronger. He's linked with all positive matter, and the longer this goes, the less power he'll have to stop the antimatter wave. Here's the plan. He's planted devices powerful enough to stop the antimatter wave throughout time on Earth 1 and Earth 2. Basically interdimensional tuning forks. The Monitor later explains that the problem is that the multiverse was never meant to be. An event caused the single universe it was supposed to be to split up into the different worlds. And they're all weaker as a result. Like, on a physical level, it's why the antimatter wave is having such an easy time sweeping through it. After all, antimatter and positive matter should just cancel each other out, but the antimatter is actually consuming the other worlds. Although I admit I'm kind of making that part up, because otherwise it's unexplained why they're not just annihilating each other. The purpose of the tuning forks is ultimately to merge the Earths back together so that they're stronger. And the reason they're placed throughout time is so that we can celebrate DC's varied history of books even more, starting with the future in between the modern day and the Legion of Superheroes time. The time of Kamandi and the Great Disaster. And yet the Monitor didn't recruit Ray Palmer to stop it? It's almost like the Monitors were weaker and dumber when separated from one guy too. The heroes and villains gathered have been sent to safeguard the tuning forks from damage, both from the enemy responsible for all this, but also any people they might come across. Kamandi even tries to scale one, but falls, getting saved by the Superman from Earth 2. Superman? How do you... Ah, of course. You must have met my Earth 1 counterpart. Actually, in my world, you work with chicken robots and have a huge Santa Claus beard. Oh no, we're not in the right Kamandi timeline! Other places include New York in the present time, with the new Teen Titans and the Outsiders dealing with the chaos caused by the Wall of Antimatter, World War II and DC's war comic characters, the Haunted Tank, Sergeant Rock and Easy Company, and of course the best named team of war characters, the Losers. There's also a fork during the Wild West to unite DC's Western heroes, like Batlash and Jonah Hex. And yet still another fork is placed in Atlantis in Arian's time. Oh, jeez. Did the Monitor just set the tuning fork right in the middle of the city? I hope that was just a golf course or something. More shadow demons emerge and attack our heroes, though they have a little better time driving them off now. Speaking of, since Harbinger's split state has ended and they've all merged back together, the shadow demon begins influencing her, causing her to alter her emotions and make her more inclined to hate the Monitor. However, she still goes on a new mission for him, to retrieve the baby from Earth 3, who has suddenly aged a few years and is a small child now. Oh god, Harbinger, if he claims to be your lover from another dimension, just start shooting and never stop! Lila, what is it? What is wrong? Can't you bring the Luthor baby to me? Lila doesn't quite know how to answer the man who had raised her since childhood. Indeed, how can you explain the sight she now sees? I guess the baby is no longer a baby is something completely unspeakable now. Back in Atlantis, the guy in the green cloak, going by the name Pariah, shows up as per his usual deal of witnessing destruction. Except he's shown up next to the Psycho Pirate. As I said, his desire to alter emotions is addictive to him, which means I should expect the Psycho Pirate to be crawling around a bathroom floor trying to snort emotions, I guess. So when he sees Pariah weeping and sorrowful, he uses his power to make him laughing and gleeful. Arian starts to fight him when he wants to start feeding on more emotions, but then suddenly an energy beam surrounds the psycho-pirate and teleports him away. He's brought into a dark void by the enemy responsible for the antimatter wall, promising him an entire world's emotions to play with if he serves him. If he doesn't, well, this enemy can make his face disappear.
Ooh, faced!
I should note I'm actually jumping around a little bit for the first few issues. Again, the problem with this being such a big story is that it requires summarizing a lot if you want me to try to get this video out on Monday on time. And since there are so many scenes and so many characters, there's only so much I can get into in any finer detail. Hell, look at how long I've been going so far and talking about some of the major players of the story. Speaking of, the child, who we'll now refer to by his name, Alexander Luthor. As his intelligence begins to grow along with his rapid aging, the Monitor analyzes him and discovers that he's an anomaly. Both matter and antimatter exist within him without problem. One of the weird things about the antimatter wall is that it seems to affect all of time simultaneously. For instance, the Barry Allen Flash is in the future because of events in his own book, but the wall of antimatter is there while it's also in the then-present day in New York. He vibrates to try to send a message back in time to get help, once again appearing to Batman, but something goes wrong, probably a result of the antimatter wall, and he's pulled elsewhere. Also in deep space, Superman villain Brainiac is observing the antimatter sweeping through space and decides that he needs the help from Earth to combat it. As we reach issue 4, we have a new question to ponder. How fast is the antimatter wall actually going? I mean, it's gotta move pretty fast to be going through space to annihilate entire universes, yet on Earth in the present day, Supergirl and Batgirl meet up in Gotham at night, despite us earlier seeing the wall going through New York during the afternoon.
Space is warped and time is bendable.
Speaking of Supergirl, this gives us a chance to really show the human factor of the story, as Barbara Gordon contemplates how useless she feels without powers compared to Supergirl. That the antimatter wall is so huge and terrifying, and how, well, this really does feel like the end of the world. Mind you, the emotion of the scene is kind of hampered by Supergirl wearing that 80s headband, but hey, they're trying. Pariah arrives on a world created specifically for this story, where a group of nuclear-powered superhumans rule this world and protect it. They try to attack him, blaming him for the antimatter wall, but he's completely invulnerable to harm. And the wall finishes eating up the world, but Pariah figures out that he can take someone with him when he teleports out, so he grabs the queen of this Earth, a woman by the name of Lady Quark. Lady Quark is a very important character, guys. I mean, she's one of the main survivors of this story. She's on the second to last page of the entire miniseries as part of the epilogue, and she does the important job of existing. I tried to find out why she was created, why importance was placed on her to that degree, but I couldn't find anything. Pariah at least has backstory within this situation, and his existence drives the plot, but Lady Quark? She's just angry and sad about the loss of her world, and that's it. A slightly more important character, though, is Dr. Light, an heroic version with the name to counteract bumbling villain turned icky rapist in Identity Crisis. The Monitor creates her for some reason, but hey, she's more impactful in the DC universe than Lady Quark was. One thing I haven't really mentioned until now in greater detail is that the antimatter wall is doing more than just absorbing things. It's causing catastrophic weather distortions throughout the planet. The sky is turned red, volcanoes are erupting, earthquakes, fire, the whole 9 yards. Not sure why the antimatter would be doing it, but it just causes more and more chaos for an already chaotic situation.
For decades, a pessimistic placards announced the world is coming to an end. Today, heralded by hail-filled crimson skies and electrical fury, the world is indeed at its end. Smoke 'em if you got 'em.
Pariah is drawn to the Monitor satellite, where he explains to him that he is the one responsible for saving his life despite his sins. Said sins left unexplained for the time being. And indeed, he's also responsible for his dimension jumping. Before he can get into why, though, the possessed Harbinger finally strikes, killing the Monitor. Everything seems lost at the end of issue 5. The Monitor is dead, Pariah doesn't know how to activate the tuning forks, and the antimatter walls seem to absorb Earths 1 and 2.